So you may as well queue up a YouTube video and pretend you're playing alongside with them with your favorite character, because boy, you are not seeing them again for a while. And if your character happens to be a 4-star, you're fucked. When you first start playing Genshin, you look through the character list and pick a favorite based off design or a character that you absolutely want to pull for because, hey, they look cool. Now, you may have gotten lucky and pick the character that happens to be an Archon who gets tons of reruns throughout the year and gets put in a lot of contents, you know, since they're an Archon and they have a huge impact on the game. But for some players, they get a little unlucky. Now, you may happen to pick a character that happens to get no love from Hoyo and gets thrown into Genshin's neglected bin of characters, like Kokomi, for an example, who is now swimming in the sewers since, you know, she had a nice fish tank until she got dumped out, flushed down the toilet, and got replaced by Nouvellette, who is now happily swimming in her tank. So, welcome back, friends, family, and fun. Today, we're going to be talking about Genshin's huge problem with neglecting characters, as Genshin picks a few characters to say, you two, and never lets them see the light of day ever again. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this today was because I was scrolling through my account, you know, I just wanted to figure out characters to build or who hasn't been built on my account, and not because I wanted to take away some characters' artifacts because I don't use them anymore and you put them onto characters that I need for the Abyss to clear because I'm too lazy to farm domains, but because I wanted to make sure my account was like well and nice and everything's fine. But I happened to stumble across Ayato. You know, Ayato, he used to be a really cool character. I mean, he had so much hype surrounding him. He had a great build up, but he quickly had a downfall as his kit wasn't too good, his story quest wasn't great at all, and he's pretty neglected. I mean, he hasn't gotten a rerun for a while and he gets like no love from Hoyo. I mean, he showed up in an event but for a very short time and like he didn't get that much, you know, screen time in the event, but whatever. But he had a good hype up to his release, and that's when the downfall happened. Now, this happens to a lot of characters since when Genshin characters first release, they get put into this spotlight since they're new and Hoyo wants you to pull for them and spend your money on them. Now, when they're in this spotlight, what happens next is pretty crucial because they either A, might be Hoyo's favorite and get tons of content, or B, they're in meta, so, you know, you're going to see them frequently and they're going to be having a lot of reruns, or C, they might be a terrible character that you're never, ever going to see again. Now, this is the case for a lot of 5 stars, but 4 stars, if you happen to have a favorite character that's a 4-star, I am so sorry. Because the chances of you seeing them in an event is so unbelievably low that's not even funny anymore. You might get lucky and your favorite might be Bennett or someone that, you know, gets shown in an event or gets a skin, but chances are you're never going to see them again after that. But I don't want to talk too much about 4 stars, unfortunately, because they're 4 stars, so of course they're not going to get as much love as the 5 stars, but since they're still a character in the game, it would be nice to see a lot more of them, you know, shown in the game where they belong, but that's a talk for another day. Usually when characters are released, we end up seeing them in the Archon quest later on, or in some promotional event that the characters happens to be in. But for some characters, they get severely unlucky, and they happen to only show up in their own story quests and don't actually get involved into the main storyline, and for some reason they only get like voice lines about them, but they actually never show up. We can only go interact with them in the story quest. Now, honestly, I find this like to be a huge problem, because if their story quest sucks, you're just at a loss. And for an example, whose story quest was absolutely terrible was Ayato. I mean, I wouldn't say it was terrible, but, you know, since Ayato's like, you know, the head of the Kamisato clan and a Yashiro commissioner, I expect him to have like a lot more like things going on in his storyline and not happen to deal with a wedding. But, you know, I guess it does kind of show like some parts of his character, but I feel like they could have done a lot more with this story quest and made it a little bit more entertaining. Now, this happens with a lot of 5 stars. I mean, they have like such a great power, or they have such a great backstory, and we just don't get to see much of this in their story quests. And we can obviously like see the amount of work that they put into some story quests, like for an example, Skirk had an amazing story quest. I mean, it's pretty lore relevant. I mean, we see a lot of things, we hear a lot of information. I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't played it, but we hear a lot of like lore a lot of important information about the lore, and it just really sucks that this happens to only be, you know, for special characters like Skirk. Now, if the character isn't relevant in lore, of course that they're not going to get much content, but that doesn't mean that their story quest needs to have bad writing. Now, on the other hand, for characters that aren't so cool, you know, since Genshin pumps out a lot of characters, as I've mentioned before, they have a chance of being badly written or just not having a great personality in general. And this is mainly opinion based, but sometimes you can really see when a character is done, like, you know, doesn't have much work put into them. I mean, when you build a character, obviously you want their ambitions to be revealed, you want their strengths and weaknesses to show, or you want some type of character development for them to, like, you know, see how they grow. Sometimes for certain characters, we don't get to see much of this. I mean, we just see a bland character whose personality is based around the Traveler. I really hate when this happens, but I understand that the Traveler is the main character, so obviously a lot of characters are going to revolve around the Traveler. But at the same time, the Traveler came to Devat, so obviously they all have their own lives before the Traveler, and I feel like they don't really like show this for a lot of characters. It just feels like they'd have like no personality. They were like just a walking mindless person until the Traveler showed up, and they just based their whole personality around. Now, before we end this video, I want to talk about something very important about banners, the whole staple of gacha games. Now, this problem that Hoyo has with pumping out characters and not showing any love to them is horrible when it comes to banners. Now, Hoyo currently has only 2 banners, and I've talked about this before with should Genshin add 3 banners or not, or I'm not sure if I, you know, released that video yet, but we're not talking about that yet. Anyways, I made a point if Genshin should release 3 banners or not, since they're having so many characters and it's hard to keep up with them. Now, the reason why this absolutely sucks for Hoyo to be pumping out characters not showing any love to them is for the characters that don't get any love, they are never to be seen in the banner again. Now, we have this lovely picture of Farina, who I'm not sure follows the Archon rule. I'm pretty sure she doesn't follow the Archon rule where she gets rerun every now and then. But my point here is Archons get a rerun since they're significant to the story, and they're Archons, so I expect them to get reruns. But for characters that don't get any love or characters that aren't really important to the story, they can take a while to get a rerun. Now, how Hoyo should fix this is a very controversial thing, since, you know, if they add 3 banners, I have a feeling that Hoyo's going to be absolutely insane, and they're going to put 3 most anticipated characters side by side, or have like 2 anticipated characters, and then have that character whose rerun you've been waiting for, and now you don't know who to pull for because these 2 characters you've been waiting for a while, and you have to decide between these 2 important characters or a character whose rerun you've been waiting for. Now, this is going to be a problem since 3 banners means it's going to be a hard time for free-to-play players to save for them, since they're going to pop up and not be shown again for a while. But since we only have 2 characters in the banner for right now, so we're seeing a lot of like issues emerge. For an example, I'm gonna bring this up again, Shenhe, whose banner we didn't see for a while, for over a year. We're seeing the same problem being repeated again with Sino and Kokumi and characters like that. And I say this over and over again, and so as many people. Again, this problem can be fixed with Chronicle of the Wish banner if they made it more frequent, or to show up in like every other patch at least, to make it like a little bit more fair, since Chronicle Wish happens once and then doesn't happen again until the next region, which terrible idea. I don't know who came up with that, but you know, characters who don't get any love, they're gonna take a while to come up on that banner, and when you choose a favorite character, they're not gonna show up on the banner for a while. And if you say you want that character Hoyo, they will hear it all the way from their headquarters. They're gonna hear that, and then they're gonna decide that they're never gonna give that character a rerun ever again. So, you know, be very careful with what character you choose to be your favorite. But if you're new to the game, obviously it's gonna suck, since you're never gonna see this character for a while. If their favorite character happens to be Chao, since Ed popped up on their For You page and be like, I want to main this guy, that's gonna suck for them, since he just had his rerun on the Chronicle Wish banner, and I'm not sure if he's gonna get an actual banner rerun for a while. And I feel like Hoyo's kind of like shooting themselves in the foot here, since a lot of people, you know, they get influenced by things they see online, whether it be an edit or like they think this character design looks really cool, and it kind of just sucks for the new players, since they're gonna have to wait a while for them to get that character, or not even a while, they're just gonna have to wait like 2 years or something for that character to show up. This is also a problem for older players, since they can miss a rerun due to pulling for a character that just came out with super cool kit, and they just miss it since they might be free to play, or they might be broke in general, and they just miss their opportunity to get a character they've been waiting for a while. Now, I do understand that Genshin is a gacha game after all, and there's going to be a lot of characters being released. It's just hard to involve every character with some type of story, or have them in events. But since events aren't permanent, a lot of people aren't going to be seeing characters that they like or like seen online in like the main story quest, since they're mainly involved in events. So you may as well queue up a YouTube video and pretend you're playing alongside with them with your favorite character, because boy, you are not seeing them again for a while. And if your character happens to be a 4-star, you're fucked. I'm sorry, you're never seeing them. Like like some 4-stars, like Kav for example, since Hoyo has like a weird issue with involving a lot of 4-stars in the banner rotations and like to repeat characters that they put in past banners for some very odd reason frequently, and I'm not sure why they don't just switch it up a bit. But since those 4-stars are in meta, yeah, they're going to be shown a lot. And if the 4-star isn't in meta, but I will say that Hoyo's been doing a good job of adding small changes to Genshin to fix small problems, but there are a lot of characters whose writing feels very bland, or whose kit is very terrible, or, you know, they have a bad story quest in general. But if Hoyo does end up adding kit changes or different types of like additions to characters, I'm not sure this problem is going to be fixed anytime soon. Since Not Krai is approaching, I'm expecting a lot of change for the game, and let me know some ideas that you have to implement some characters that are not so loved by Hoyo, and ways that they can implement them in the game, or to, you know, fix that whole issue of them like not getting any love in general, since you guys have better ideas than Hoyo does themselves, and even if you put them in the reviews, they will not care. But all jokes aside, thank you so much for watching this video, and if you haven't watched my videos in the past, or this is your first time watching my video, you should go to my channel and just start scrolling through, you know, videos. I mean, I may not have like a lot of catering to your mains, since like you're never going to see them again, they're never going to rerun, but don't take that anger out on me. You know, you may as well just subscribe, since, you know, I'm like bringing light to this situation. See you in the next one, friends.